We've all heard a lot of financial advice over our lives from our parents, friends, teachers, schools, the news, and most of it, if you follow it, could actually make your life a lot harder than it has to be. And that is why I'm such a big proponent of the FIRE movement and minimalism. Both of these think very differently than your average person. You kind of live a very different lifestyle than everybody else around you, but they have huge rewards. Minimalism gives me a lot more mental clarity and reduced stress, and the FIRE movement and the idea of spending less, earning more, and then investing so that you can reach early retirement in your 20s, 30s, or 40s has remarkably changed my life and let me leave my job and kind of do what I like to do every day. Now, I've talked a lot about different rules that I've used in minimalism that kind of give me some boundaries so that I don't have to make as many choices. And in financial independence, there's also certain rules that I've either set up for myself or are common rules in the space that really give you a guideline that if you follow these rules, you're almost guaranteed some level of wealth, some level of financial independence. So that's what I wanted to go over in this video. Cut the big three. So what are the big three? So if you look at most Americans' budget, their biggest expenses is going to be housing. It's going to be your largest expense, followed by transportation and food. You also have insurance and taxes in there, but those aren't things that you can really change all that much. So we're looking at the big three that you can really control, and this is what I really started my whole journey on, is cutting down my housing expenses by living somewhere smaller, doing something like house hacking where you buy a multifamily, live in one unit, rent the other ones out, or you can do that with renting somewhere or moving your location to somewhere that's going to be cheaper, but trying to get that down as much as possible. And then you work on your transportation. If you have a car, you have a ton of expenses that go along with that. So can you get an older car, a cheaper car, no car at all, and move closer to work? Like, what can you do to get that down as much as possible? For me, it was buying old Honda Civics in cash that retain their value and sell them every few years for about what you pay for them, and then you just kind of cycle through cars that don't really cost you that much. And then the last one is food, so cutting down how often you go out and have drinks and meals, and maybe cooking at home more, cooking cheaper meals, following a grocery list and a meal plan, just really cutting that down as much as possible. Avoid consumer debt. The whole idea of the FIRE movement is getting your expenses low and then building up enough retirement savings or investments or passive income that you can cover those expenses. So you try to make sure that you never have credit card debt. Some people pay off their houses early. Whatever path you decide on, avoiding bad consumer debt is a huge rule that you must avoid it at all costs. Know exactly where you're going. So this involves a few different things. First of all, it is super important to understand where you're trying to go. Are you gonna do what is called lean FIRE? So you just cut your expenses down really low, and then you try to build up enough passive income or enough investments to cover that. Maybe your total expenses might be around $40,000 a year. Obviously, this is gonna vary wildly depending on where you live in the world, but that's kind of the more general idea. Or do you not wanna be frugal and you wanna shoot towards fat FIRE? And the idea of this is that you want a lot of money to live on in retirement, maybe double what lean FIRE would be, or even more, where you want to be able to take a lot of trips and spend money on a nice house or whatever it is for you. So if that's your goal, you're going to need a lot more money to do that. So you're going to need a much bigger investment portfolio, a lot more passive income. It's probably going to take a little longer, but it depends on what you want your lifestyle to be afterwards. Or do you want to retire as soon as possible? And this is kind of what I've done, is the whole idea of barista FIRE, where you don't have enough money to retire on indefinitely, but you don't want to wait 10 years in order to get there. So you build up a little bit of an investment portfolio, a little bit of passive income. Then you only need to work, part-time here and there in order to earn enough money to survive. And if worse comes to worse, you can just go back and get a real job. So I think it's super important to understand where you're trying to get to so you can break it down and make a specific, measurable plan on how you can get there. Understand your investments. Investing can be as simple or as complex as you want it to be. Most of their investments is going to be putting as much as they can into index fund investing, which is maybe the S&P 500 or VTSAX. And that can be so simple. You don't have to try to worry about beating the market. You just consistently put money in every month, and over the long run, it will continue to grow. There are tons of different routes that you can go, but some people dive into things that they have no clue what they're doing. They waste a ton of time and a ton of money on stuff that's not going to work out because they're trying to get rich quick, or they're trying to outsmart everybody else. And sometimes it's best to just keep it simple and make sure you understand what you're doing. Optimize your spending with credit cards. This is one of the things that actually got me interested in the FIRE movement to start with. I heard this idea of travel hacking, where you get a credit card that has a large sign-up bonus, usually around $500 to $1,000 worth of bonus, if you spend anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000 in the first 3 months. Then once you get that bonus, you can just repeat the process and move on to the next card. Obviously, there's a ton more that goes into this, and you should only do it if you can pay off your card at the end of each month. But if you're getting $1,000 back on $3,000 that you spent on groceries and gas and your normal everyday expenses, well, you just saved 33% on your everyday budget. 50% or 1. The idea of this one is if you can get your savings rate up over 50% by lowering your expenses, or if you're a 2-income household or you work a side hustle, try to take one of those incomes or that side hustle money and put it all into investments, and that can get you where you're trying to go so much quicker. That's kind of what I did, where I took all of my side hustle money, plus I was saving over 50% of my other income, and just kept reinvesting it back into real estate by being extremely frugal, because I really wasn't making all that much money. Optimize your income. As important as frugal living is to the FIRE community and retiring early, you cannot save your way to early retirement, or if you try to, it'll take forever and be wicked hard. So you have to do the other things which are super important, which is investing the money that you do save and then optimizing your income and earning as much as possible. This can mean like doing what I did and working 3 different jobs at the same time, or really focusing on the one career that you do have and doing everything you can to get a promotion or to get a pay raise or move up in some way. It could also mean starting your own business on the side, something that has a lot of potential to scale. But whatever it is, you might not be able to get to a 50% savings rate if your income always stays low. So you have to be creative and work wicked hard in order to raise that income to something that's going to allow you to save 50% of your income. And that might be really hard, but you know, if this was easy, everybody would do it. Find your passion. Early retirement sounds like this great thing, but after a while, you're gonna get bored of like doing nothing all the time, because if you're somebody who has reached early retirement, and let's say you retire at 27 or at 35, you're probably a pretty driven person, like honestly. So I think it's super important to find a hobby or something that you're really passionate about that you can be flexible with, and trying to work towards that instead of early retirement. So find something that you're passionate about and then try to find a way to make money at that thing so you can do something you really enjoy to do every day. But a lot of people never think that they can do that thing, and they wait until after I reach early retirement, after this happens, after that happens, that's when I'll start this business, this passion thing. But if you can work towards that sooner rather than later, you can have your end reward without having to wait all that time to, you know, save up $1 million or whatever it is. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next week.